Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih al-Bukhari is considered by Sunni Muslim scholars to be the most authentic book after the Quran itself, and the numbers behind its creation make that reputation feel earned. Its compiler, Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari, was born in 810 CE in Bukhara, in what is now Uzbekistan, and according to Islamic tradition, he spent 16 years traveling across the Muslim world, from Central Asia to Egypt, collecting narrations attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. He reportedly examined around 600,000 hadiths in total, and accepted fewer than 7,300 unique narrations, a rejection rate of roughly 98%. His criteria were extraordinarily strict. Every hadith required an unbroken chain of transmitters, and every person in that chain had to be verified for memory, moral character, and direct personal contact with the narrator before them. Al-Bukhari organized his accepted narrations thematically across 97 books covering belief, worship, law, manners, and history. The full title of the work translates roughly as The Abridged Collection of Authentic Hadiths with Connected Chains Regarding Matters Pertaining to the Prophet, His Practices, and His Times. Scholars note that when repetitions across different chapters are removed, the collection contains approximately 2,600 distinct narrations, though figures vary slightly depending on the addition and counting method. Al-Bukhari died in 870 CE, and in the 14 centuries since, his collection has functioned as the foundational legal and spiritual reference across Sunni Islam, cited in courts, memorized in schools, and treated as the closest thing the tradition has to an unimpeachable archive. Sahih Muslim. Sahih Muslim cites just below Sahih al-Bukhari in the hierarchy of Sunni Hadith literature, and together the two are known simply as al-Sahihain, the two Sahihs, a pair so authoritative that any narration appearing in both is considered beyond serious doubt. Its compiler, Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, was born around 815 CE in Nishapur, in what is now northeastern Iran, and he studied directly under al-Bukhari himself, absorbing the same demanding authentication standards. Muslim reportedly examined approximately 300,000 hadiths before selecting his final collection, which contains around 7,500 narrations, including repetitions, though scholars estimate roughly 3,000 to 4,000 distinct hadith when duplicates are removed, figures that vary depending on the source. Where Muslim's work distinguishes itself is in its organization. Unlike al-Bukhari, who sometimes repeated the same narration across multiple chapters to draw out different legal points, Muslim grouped all variants of a single narration together in one place, creating a more streamlined and systematic structure that many scholars consider easier to navigate. Muslim was also particularly rigorous about a specific technical requirement. He demanded not just that two transmitters in a chain were contemporaries, but that they could be shown to have actually met, a stricter standard of continuity than most compilers applied. Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj died in 875 CE in Nishapur. For over a millennium, Islamic scholarship has treated his collection and al-Bukhari's as the twin pillars on which the entire edifice of hadith authentication rests, with debates about other collections often measured against the standard these two established. Sunan Abu Dawood. Sunan Abu Dawood occupies a distinct position among the 6 canonical Sunni hadith collections because its compiler was explicit about something most others left unstated. He told you exactly what he was doing and why. Abu Dawood al-Sijistani, born around 817 CE near the modern border of Afghanistan and Iran, reportedly examined approximately 500,000 hadiths and selected around 4,800, organizing them almost exclusively around legal questions relevant to Islamic jurisprudence. In a preface that survives and is still read by students today, Abu Dawood acknowledged openly that some narrations in his collection are weak, but explained that a weak hadith was preferable to relying on pure legal reasoning when no stronger narration existed. A position of intellectual honesty that scholars have cited as one of the reasons his collection became so trusted. According to classical sources, he wrote to the great jurist Ahmad ibn Hanbal describing his methodology and received his approval, which gave the project significant early credibility. The collection's focus is deliberately narrow, where Bukhari and Muslim cover belief, ethics, history, and law together. Abu Dawood functions more like a legal manual, granular, practical, and built for judges and jurists who needed reliable precedents. Abu Dawood died in 889 CE in Basra. His willingness to grade his own material openly, to flag uncertainty rather than paper over it, made Sunan Abu Dawood a model of methodological transparency in a tradition that valued rigorous self-criticism, and it remains one of the most consulted references in Islamic legal scholarship more than 11 centuries after his death. Jami al-Tirmidhi. Jami al-Tirmidhi stands apart from the other canonical Sunni collections because its compiler didn't just gather narrations. He annotated them, graded them, and explained what Islamic legal schools did with each one, turning a Hadith collection into something closer to a running encyclopedia of Islamic scholarship. Muhammad al-Tirmidhi was born around 824 CE in Tirmidh, a city near the Amu Darya River in what is now the border region between Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, and he studied under both al-Bukhari and Abu Dawood, absorbing the strictest authentication methods of his era. His collection contains approximately 3,956 narrations, and what makes it immediately distinctive is the commentary attached to each one. Al-Tirmidhi notes whether other scholars narrated the same hadith, which legal schools act upon it, and what grade he assigns it. That grading contribution is arguably his most lasting technical achievement. Al-Tirmidhi formalized the category of Hasan, meaning good, as a distinct grade sitting between Sahih and Da'if, giving scholars a precise vocabulary for narrations that were reliable but fell short of the highest standard. Before this, the terminology was less settled. The collection is also known as al-Jami al-Kabir and covers the full range of Islamic religious life: belief, worship, ethics, virtues of the Prophet's companions, and eschatology. Al-Tirmidhi died in 892 CE, reportedly having lost his sight in his final years according to classical biographical sources. For students of Hadith, his collection functions less like an archive and more like a textbook, one that teaches you how to evaluate what you are reading while you read it. Sunan al-Nasa'i. Sunan al-Nasa'i reached its final canonical form through an act of editorial discipline that distinguishes it from nearly every other major collection. Its compiler produced a much larger work first, then cut it down when asked. Ahmad al-Nasa'i was born around 829 CE in Nasa, a city in what is now Turkmenistan, and he is regarded by many classical hadith specialists as having applied stricter narrator criticism than any of the other four Sunan compilers, with some scholars ranking his authentication standards above even Abu Dawood's, though this assessment is not unanimous. His original compilation, known as al-Sunan al-Kubra, was substantially larger, and according to classical sources, when a governor or patron asked him whether everything in it was sound, al-Nasa'i replied that it was not, and proceeded to condense it into al-Sunan al-Sugra, also called al-Mujtaba, meaning the selected, which is the version counted among the 6 canonical collections. The result contains approximately 5,270 narrations depending on the edition, with a particularly heavy concentration on the details of ritual prayer. Al-Nasa'i's coverage of Salat is unusually granular even by the standards of legal hadith literature. The circumstances of his death are disputed in classical sources. Some accounts state that he died in 915 CE following injuries sustained in Damascus, with reports suggesting he faced hostility there, though the details vary significantly across biographical traditions and should be treated with caution. What remains undisputed is his reputation. Among specialists in hadith criticism, al-Nasa'i's willingness to condense his own life's work into a leaner, more defensible form is treated as a mark of exceptional scholarly integrity. Sunan Ibn Majah. Sunan Ibn Majah holds the most contested position among the 6 canonical Sunni hadith collections, and understanding why it was included at all reveals something important about how Islamic scholarship balances completeness against caution. Ibn Majah al-Qazwini was born in 824 CE in Qazvin in what is now northwestern Iran, and his collection contains approximately 4,341 narrations organized across 37 books covering law, belief, and practice. The feature that secured its place in the canon is also the source of its greatest scrutiny. Roughly 1,339 of its narrations do not appear in any of the other 5 collections, according to figures cited in classical Hadith literature, making it a uniquely valuable repository of otherwise unattested material. But that same uniqueness raises questions, because narrations uncorroborated elsewhere face higher standards of proof, and classical scholars, including al-Bukhari, identified a notable proportion of weak and in some cases severely problematic narrations within the collection. It is worth noting that the canonical status of Sunan Ibn Majah was not always settled. Some classical scholars counted Malik's Muwatta as the 6th authoritative collection instead, and the debate persisted for centuries before Ibn Majah's work became the standard choice in most Sunni scholarly traditions. Ibn Majah died in 887 CE. The collection's eventual acceptance carries a lesson the tradition itself acknowledges openly. Its unique narrations were considered too legally and historically useful to exclude, provided readers understood that the text required more careful scrutiny than the 5 collections surrounding it. It earned its seat at the table, but the tradition never pretended that seat came without conditions. Al-Muwatta of Imam Malik. Al-Muwatta of Imam Malik is the oldest surviving major hadith collection in Islamic scholarship, predating Sahih al-Bukhari by several decades, and its compiler is reported to have spent the better part of his adult life revising it, continuously refining and reducing it across roughly 40 years, according to classical biographical sources. Malik ibn Anas was born around 711 CE in Medina and died there in 795 CE, spending nearly his entire life in the city of the Prophet, which was itself central to his legal philosophy. What makes the Muwatta unlike any other major collection is that Malik did not treat hadiths alone as the basis for legal authority. He also incorporated the living practice of the people of Medina, what scholars call amal, arguing that what the community of Medina had continuously done since the Prophet's time was itself a form of transmitted knowledge that carried legal weight. No other major compiler adopted this framework. The collection contains approximately 1,720 narrations, depending on the recension consulted, and the fact that it exists in multiple recensions is itself significant. Different students of Malik transmitted the text with slight variations, and the version recorded by Yahya ibn Yahya al-Masmudi became dominant across North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula, shaping the Maliki legal school that remains the majority tradition across North and West Africa to this day. Imam al-Shafi'i is widely reported in classical sources to have said, "There was no book on earth more correct than the Muwatta," a statement made before Sahih al-Bukhari existed. The title means the well-trodden path, and after 13 centuries, that path remains in continuous use. Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal is the largest of the major hadith collections, and one of the most remarkable scholarly achievements in classical Islamic civilization, containing somewhere between 27,000 and 40,000 narrations, depending on whether repetitions are counted, and which edition is consulted. Figures that dwarf the roughly 7,300 narrations in Sahih al-Bukhari. Ahmad ibn Hanbal was born in 780 CE in Baghdad and became one of the most influential Islamic scholars in history, founding the Hanbali school of law and serving as a defining figure in Sunni theological identity. The Musnad is organized not by legal topic but by companion. Narrations are grouped under the name of the companion of the Prophet who transmitted them, giving the collection a biographical architecture rather than a jurisprudential one, which makes it a different kind of tool than the 6 canonical Sunni collections. Ahmad included narrations of varying grades, and he reportedly acknowledged that some weaker narrations were included because they represented the best available evidence on a given question when nothing stronger existed. The collection was also expanded after his death. His son Abdullah added narrations that Ahmad had gathered but not formally incorporated, and these additions are noted in classical commentaries. What gives the Musnad a significance beyond its contents is the life of its compiler. Ahmad ibn Hanbal was imprisoned and flogged during the Abbasid-era Mihna, an inquisition demanding scholars affirm that the Quran was created, and he refused to recant across years of punishment, a stance that made him a symbol of scholarly independence. He died in 855 CE in Baghdad, and his archive remains the most comprehensive single repository of hadith material in Sunni Islam, Al-Kafi. Al-Kafi is the most authoritative hadith collection in Twelver Shia Islam, and to understand what it contains requires understanding a framework that differs from the Sunni collections in one fundamental respect. In Shia Islamic tradition, the Imams, the 12 descendants of Ali ibn Abi Talib, who are recognized as the rightful leaders of the Muslim community, are themselves authoritative transmitters of the Prophet's teachings, and their statements carry hadith-level weight alongside the Prophet's own words. Al-Kafi reflects this theological framework throughout. Its compiler, Muhammad ibn Yaqub al-Kulaini, was born around 864 CE and died in 941 CE in Baghdad, and he gathered narrations during a period Twelver Shia tradition identifies as the minor occultation, a time when the 12th Imam was believed to be in communication with the community through designated intermediaries before his full occultation. The collection contains approximately 16,000 narrations organized across three major sections: Usul al-Kafi, covering the foundations of belief and theology; Furu al-Kafi, covering legal practice and religious obligations; and al-Rawda, a miscellaneous section. It is worth stating clearly that not all 16,000 narrations in al-Kafi are considered equally authentic even within Shia scholarship. The tradition developed its own rigorous system of hadith grading, and classical and contemporary Shia scholars have debated the reliability of individual narrations extensively, a fact that outside discussions of the collection often overlook. The title means the sufficient, in terms of its structural role within its tradition, the foundational legal and theological reference consulted across centuries of scholarship. Al-Kafi occupies a position in Twelver Shia Islam broadly analogous to the one Sahih al-Bukhari holds in Sunni Islam. Mishkat al-Masabih. Mishkat al-Masabih is not an original hadith collection in the way the others on this list are. It is a curated anthology drawn from earlier sources, and that deliberate design choice is precisely what made it one of the most widely taught Islamic texts across South Asia for centuries. The work builds on an earlier compilation called Masabih al-Sunnah by al-Baghawi, who died around 1122 CE, but that original version omitted source citations, leaving students unable to verify where individual narrations came from. Khatib al-Tabrizi, working in the 14th century and completing his expanded version around 1336 CE according to standard references, systematically added those missing citations and incorporated additional narrations, producing a more complete and academically traceable resource. The result contains approximately 6,000 narrations organized thematically across topics including belief, worship, ethics, social conduct, and eschatology. Arranged not for specialist researchers mining technical chains of transmission, but for students and educated believers who needed reliable access to hadith literature without navigating the full apparatus of the canonical collections. Traditional Islamic educational institutions across the Indian subcontinent incorporated Mishkat al-Masabih into their core curricula, and it became one of the most consistently taught hadith texts in madrasa education across that region, a pattern documented across several centuries of Islamic scholarship. The title translates roughly as a niche for lights, an image suggesting something that holds and directs illumination rather than generating it from scratch, which is an accurate description of what the book actually does. More ordinary Muslims encountered the hadith tradition through this collection than through Bukhari or Muslim, making it the most consequential doorway into hadith literature that most people never hear about. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.